He wanted me, and I knew it long before he ever said a word. It was not written in messages or spoken in loud promises. It lived quietly in the pauses between our conversations, in the way his eyes stayed on me a little longer than necessary, and in the careful tone of his voice when he spoke my name. I was not sure when it began, but one day I realized that something had changed, and nothing felt the same again. We met in the most ordinary way. There was no dramatic beginning, no music playing in the background, no moment that felt special at first. We worked in the same place, shared the same routine, and slowly became familiar faces in each other's daily life. At first, he was just another person, polite and respectful, someone I greeted without thinking. But over time, I started to notice small details. He remembered things I said casually, things I had forgotten myself. He asked how my day was, and he actually waited for the answer. I was used to people listening only to reply, not to understand. He was different. When I spoke, he leaned in slightly, as if my words mattered. When I laughed, his face softened, and when I was quiet, he did not rush to fill the silence. That silence felt comfortable, not heavy. It felt safe. And safety can be dangerous when you are not prepared for it. I told myself not to think too much about it. I reminded myself that kindness does not always mean desire. But my heart did not listen to logic. Slowly, without permission, I began to feel his presence even when he was not there. A simple message from him could change my mood for the entire day. I hated that power, yet I welcomed it at the same time. He never crossed a line. That was what made everything more confusing. He respected my space, my boundaries, my unspoken rules. Sometimes I wondered if I was imagining things. Maybe he was just a good person. Maybe this was all happening only in my mind. But then there were moments that could not be ignored. Moments when his voice became softer, when his questions became more personal, when his concern went deeper than it needed to. One evening, we stayed late at work. The building was almost empty, and the quiet felt different from the usual noise. We talked about life, about dreams we never shared with others, about fears we pretended not to have. I spoke about my past carefully, choosing words that would not reveal too much. He listened without judgment, without interruption. When I finished, he did not offer advice. He simply said he understood. That was enough to break something inside me. I realized then that he wanted me, not just in a simple or physical way, but in a deeper sense. He wanted to know me, to understand me, to be close to the parts of me that I kept hidden. That realization scared me more than rejection ever could. Wanting someone is easy. Being wanted like that is terrifying. I started pulling back without explaining why. I replied slower, smiled less, and avoided moments where we could be alone. He noticed, of course. People always notice when you change toward them. But he did not confront me. He gave me space, even when it probably hurt him. That hurt me too, in a strange and quiet way. At night, I thought about him more than I wanted to admit. I wondered what would happen if I allowed myself to feel freely. I imagined conversations that never happened and answers to questions never asked. I asked myself if I was protecting my heart or simply running away from something real. Fear can look a lot like strength when you are used to hiding. One day, he finally spoke. Not in a dramatic confession, not with grand words. He simply told me that my absence felt heavy and that he missed the way we used to talk. His honesty caught me off guard. There was no pressure in his voice, no demand for anything in return. Just truth. Pure and unguarded. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to explain how confusing it felt to be seen so clearly, how being wanted made me question my own worth, how closeness reminded me of past pain. But the words stayed inside me. Instead, I told him I needed time. He nodded, accepting my answer without disappointment, even though I could see it in his eyes. That was when I understood something important. Being wanted does not always mean being ready. Sometimes, the timing is wrong even when the feeling is right. Sometimes, two hearts meet at a moment when one of them is still learning how to heal. He wanted me, and a part of me wanted him too. But wanting is not always enough. It requires courage, honesty, and the willingness to risk being hurt. I was still learning how to do that. And maybe one day, when fear no longer controls my choices, I will be brave enough to choose what my heart has known all along. he wanted me in a way that was impossible to ignore, yet easy to misunderstand. It was not loud or demanding. It did not come with dramatic confessions or desperate promises. It lived quietly in his patience, in his consistency, and in the way he stayed even when he had every reason to leave. I noticed it slowly, like realizing the rain has started only after your clothes are already wet. By the time I understood his feelings, I was already trapped between my heart and my fear. My heart felt drawn to him, calm in his presence, warm in his attention. My fear, however, reminded me of everything that could go wrong. I had learned, through experience, that closeness often comes with pain. I had built walls so high that even I forgot what was behind them. We spent time together naturally, without planning it. Our conversations flowed easily, touching simple topics at first, then slowly moving deeper. He talked about his struggles honestly, without trying to impress me. I admired that. Most people hide their weaknesses, but he placed his in front of me without shame. That vulnerability made me trust him, and trust is a dangerous gift. Sometimes I caught him looking at me when he thought I was not paying attention. There was something gentle in his eyes, something hopeful and afraid at the same time. I pretended not to notice, because noticing would mean accepting the truth. Accepting the truth would mean making a choice, and choices terrified me. I had convinced myself that distance was safer. So I created it carefully, without conflict. I became busy. I delayed replies. I smiled, but not too deeply. I thought this would make things easier for both of us. I was wrong. Distance does not erase feelings. It only makes them louder in silence. One afternoon, we sat together without speaking much. The silence between us was different now. It was heavy, full of words waiting to be said. He finally broke it by asking me if he had done something wrong. That question stayed with me longer than any confession could have. It showed his concern, his self-doubt, his fear of losing something he had never officially claimed. I told him he had done nothing wrong. That was the truth. The problem was never him. The problem was my inability to accept that someone could want me without trying to control or change me. I had spent so long believing I was too much or not enough that being wanted simply felt unreal. He told me, quietly, that he cared about me. He did not ask for anything. He did not demand an answer. He only wanted me to know. His honesty felt like a mirror, forcing me to look at myself clearly. I saw my fear, my hesitation, my habit of running when things start to matter. That night, I could not sleep. His words repeated in my mind. I realized that he was not asking me to be perfect. He was not asking me to promise forever. He was simply asking me to be honest, the way he had been. And honesty requires courage. I thought about all the moments I had felt safe with him. The way he listened. The way he respected my boundaries without questioning them. The way he celebrated my small achievements as if they were important. These were not the actions of someone who only wanted me for selfish reasons. These were the actions of someone who truly cared. The next time we met, I decided to stop hiding. My voice trembled as I told him the truth. I told him I was afraid. Afraid of getting attached. Afraid of losing myself. Afraid of repeating old mistakes. I expected disappointment. Instead, I saw understanding. He told me he was not in a hurry. He said feelings do not need to be rushed to be real. He said he would respect my pace, even if that meant waiting. No one had ever offered me patience like that before. It felt both comforting and overwhelming. Still, even patience has limits, and I knew that. I knew I could not keep him in uncertainty forever. Wanting someone also means taking responsibility for their feelings. I did not want to hurt him by staying silent or unsure. In the days that followed, I reflected deeply. I realized that fear had protected me once, but now it was holding me back. I understood that avoiding pain also meant avoiding love, connection, and growth. He wanted me, yes, but more importantly, he wanted me honestly. When I finally spoke again, my words were calm. I told him I could not promise certainty, but I could promise effort. I could promise honesty and presence. He smiled in a way that told me that was enough, at least for now. He wanted me, and I chose not to run. I chose to step forward carefully, aware of the risks, but willing to take them. Sometimes love does not begin with certainty. Sometimes it begins with a simple decision to stay, even when fear whispers that leaving would be easier.